Hello everyone, welcome back. So in our Appium Java framework series, today we are going to see an extension to this page object model, and also we are going to see today how we can perform the invalid login scenarios. So in our previous session, we have seen the valid login scenario where you have entered the valid username and password, and we were looking into whether the login is working fine or not, right? So today we are going to see multiple combinations of invalid login scenarios where you can leave the username blank, username field blank, or you can leave the password field blank, or you can give the invalid username and password both, right? So the different invalid scenarios, different error text will be shown into the application, right? So how do we handle that? And also what we can do to make sure that this invalid test scenario will be fitting for both Android and iOS. Okay, so let's get started. So for this, first of all, I will be taking the Android application to show that what are the different combinations of error we can see in case of invalid login. So let me quickly launch the application manually. So now if you see that if I'm giving a valid login and password, it will log in as usual. But let's say that I'm making this password field empty, and you can see password is required. The same way, if I enter something and if I make sure that this field is empty, then it says that username field is required. If I'm giving invalid username or invalid password, it will give me another set of error actually here. So 3 different set of errors with 4 combinations, right? So that is what we are going to test it actually in our invalid login scenario. Perfect then. So the first and foremost thing is that we need to identify this error text actually, or the field that is associated with this, right? And this is basically the login field or the login screen, right? So for both iOS and Android, we are going to identify the web elements that provides this particular text. Okay, so for this, let me open the Appium inspector as well. And first of all, I'll go with the Android My Demo, and here you can see all the related capabilities are set. And I will open my terminal and I will run my Appium server or the start session of the Appium inspector. And I will go to the login screen. And then in this case, I will just click on login, and you can see the username field is required coming. So let's capture that. So you can see, so this is how you will be capturing the web element for this. Now you can see there is no specific web element that provides me this particular text, because this is like a generic, right, Android widget text view. I can have multiple Android widget text views. So that's why I need to use this particular XPath actually. How do you know if this works fine? I can quickly go here into the search button, select the XPath, and then go with this and then search it. And if I highlight, you can see this field is coming. Like that you can identify. The same way, if I go for something here, I'm entering and here, and then if I go with this text and here, I can identify, and as usual I cannot take this as it is, right? So I will have to take this particular XPath. Okay, so the thing is that all these 3 different error messages and these fields, right, you need to take the combination into the page object model. Don't worry, I have already copy pasted these combinations. I will be entering that quickly. Now the same thing, we have to identify the locators for our iOS as well. So let me quickly turn on the iOS simulator and show you the same error messages. Let me close this Appium inspector and open Presley for my iOS. And this is the iOS application, right? And let me go to the Appium inspector, go to the iOS details, or these are the iOS capabilities. Click on the start session. And let me quickly go to this login and go shopping. So this is already login, right? So let me quickly log out and then come back to this screen. And let's wait for the Appium inspector to launch the iOS application. Okay, as you can see, this is opening. Now if I click on this, you can see as usual the username is required, right? And if I refresh this Appium inspector screen, and if I tap on this and then come back to this XML view to refresh this, let's see, where is this? Yes, you can see. So this is again a static field, right? You can see I cannot use this particular accessibility ID because this is the display text, right? So I need to find a unique identifier. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'll take this particular, so you can see I cannot take this username is required also. So I'll first take this parent. Now you can see the parent message is which one? This one actually. Here you see this is the parent one, right? On top of that, or maybe slash, I will take XQ element static text actually here. So I can take this XPath, come back here. This is my parent, right? You can see this is a static one. Okay, will not change anything. And then slash, I'll take this XQ test, and here you can see. And now if I search it, I should get that. Like this, you will be uniquely identifying this one. The same way, if I enter something here and log in, you can see this text. Refresh this screen, and if you come back here, you will be getting this text. The same way, go to the parent one, that is this one, slash, you can come back to this, which is nothing but this static text. And when you say get value of this web element, you will get this text. In case of Android, it is the text. In case of iOS, this is the value. So by using get text, you will get in Android. Here you will be getting get attribute of value to get this display text. That's how. Okay, so as I told, I have captured already the web elements for this error text, username required, password required, and this invalid. Okay, so let's put it into the framework now. Now there would be like 4 combinations of your logins, invalid login scenarios that we have actually. So let me show you those things. So here you can see there are, as I told, there are 4 different combinations of the invalid login scenarios. One is username and password valid. You have to give the valid username but in an empty password, so it will say is password required. For an empty username, it will say username required. For invalid username or invalid password, any one of these combinations, it will throw this error. Now this is common for both of your Android and iOS. So it means that we need 4 different test cases for your invalid login scenario. Valid scenario, anyway, we have seen already. Now let's do one thing. We will implement that into our framework actually. So for this, what I'm going to do, I'll take another login test actually. So this is basically, you can see valid, right? So it means that now I will be taking 4 different scenarios for the invalid. Okay, how do we do that? Now I can take individual test, right? Like I can say like this, copy paste, and then I'll say here invalid, let's say empty username. Okay, I can give like this name, and I will take another one, and here I will say empty password test. I can say like this, invalid login, and here like this. Okay, and here I always make sure that this particular test name always ends with the test. And then the same thing, I will have another test which would be here, I'll say invalid login test only, where the password, username and password both will be invalid actually there. Now I'll tell you why I'm taking only one for both of these combinations actually here. For this 2 actually, I'm taking one test actually, and I will be using the testNG data provider to get the data, okay, from the testNG data provider. Okay, I'll show you that how to create the data provider data and then throw it to this particular test. Now for this, what we are going to do, all the tests, all the application web elements, whichever we have seen, right? This error, all these things, now I have to create it into the login page object model, right? So let's go to the login page object model, and then what are the different errors that we are getting? All these things we need to create the bilocators for them, right? So that is what I'm going to create it now. and I will say private by, and here I'll say username error text. Okay, so this is my first field, right? That is what I'm going to test it, right? That content from there. Okay, fine. Now all these three different bilocators, right? I need to get the XPath actually, and that is different as we have seen in our Appium inspector. For Android, this bilocator is different. For iOS, a different XPath that I need to mention, right? So in that case, what we need to do, because we are now designing one framework for both Android and iOS, I cannot have two different pages for the login page, Android login page, iOS, right? That is why we have taken this approach, right? If it is Android, then all the Android related locators I need to specify here. It means that now the username required field, that error we were seeing, right? So I need to provide that particular XPath actually here. So here I'll say by.xpath, and inside this I will be specifying that XPath. So I have already taken that, so let me copy paste here. Okay, so this is the XPath for the username required field. Now I'll just copy this one and I'll paste it three different things, right? One is username error text, then password error text, and then credentials error text. And let me update the XPath for each of these. Okay, you can see username error message, this is password error message, this is generic error message. Okay, from the parent I'm taking that particular text actually here. So when I say username error text dot get text, I will get that particular text that is displayed on the error field. Now the same thing for all of these three different web elements, right? I will be creating the iOS specific, because this condition relates to the iOS. So in this case, I won't be using Android, but rather I will be using the XQ test those concepts, right? Okay, and you can see it is XQ element. Here it is username error message, password error message, generic error message, and then this should stay as the child element. Now when I say username error text dot get attribute of value, I will get that particular error text. Now what is the point of taking all these things? So what I'm going to do, the test that I'm creating, first I will take the test where username field will be empty, and if I log in here, I need to verify when I click on this login, this particular text is visible or not. It means that I need to get this username error text dot get text. When I do that, I will get this particular message. Okay, when I'm saying from the iOS side, this particular error text dot get attribute of value, I'll get this. Like that I will be verifying in each of the tests that I have specified here. Now let's first show you, I will show you the empty username so that you can get to know. Now you can see one thing actually here, in each of these particular login test or the test methods, I'm creating the object, which is not a good practice, right? Because I'm creating the same object time to time. What can I do at the beginning? I can put a setup actually here, public void, and I can say setup something, and I will say I'll take all these things here. I'll do Control X, and here now when I'm doing this, now these particular objects I cannot access inside, right, other test methods, because this is very local to this setup method only. So what I'm going to do, I'll create one global variable actually here, and all these things I'll keep it as like this. So I'm taking the global variables here, and these things I will delete it. So it means that one time I'm setting up this object and I'm using. Now I no longer need these things here. But how can I run this one, right? Before to this test methods I need to run it, right? So if I say here the tag, if I put the tag as before test, let's say before test. Now when exactly this before test executes, normally executes before tag of your, before test tag of your testNG XML, right? Now let's say I don't have the testNG XML to run it. if I want to run it like this, how can I run it? I cannot do. Before method, now before method I don't want to do, because every method that is running, before to that it will be running. It means that repeated, right? So the idea is that whenever I'm running this particular class methods, right, or the tests, it should only run once. It means that I'll make sure that this has to be before class. So whenever I'm coming to this particular class to run it, right, it should run once for all of these test methods. But there is a catch actually. If you go to this base test, right, you can see I'm using the app launch for the before method. It means that the app launch will be happening for all of these test methods one by one. Multiple times it will launch your application, right, or the simulator, inside the simulator, whatever the app is there, which I don't want actually. So for this I would suggest to go for the before class actually. So it means that before any of the test class that I'm running, because in future we will be adding multiple classes, right? So for each class this app will be launched once. And if you want to stop your application, right, or close your application, then you can use the after class, and then you can close the driver, actually Appium driver. That's up to you. But hope you understood why I'm taking as before class instead of before method. Now let's say that come back to this first empty username as I told, right? So what am I doing here? Each test I'm coming to the login page. Is it required? Not really, right? Because I need the login page to be available for all these methods, right? And you can see this line is repeating in all tests. So I will just say Control X and I will create it here. Coming back to this invalid login empty username test, I'm testing the username field as blank, right? So as simple as that, I'm making it as empty, and password you can enter anything actually here. Now what kind of validation I need to do? I need to make sure that this username field is required. This text should appear, right? It means that this particular test line is assertion is not required actually. This is only true when I am having a valid login, right? Because after valid login only I can wait for that product test, right? But here I'm going to verify after I'm using this empty login and password, I should be able to see this username is required. Let's get this text actually. Where should I do? Now here I can get it, but I would always suggest to go into the page object model to write the actions here. What should be my action? To get the text from this particular web element. So what I can do, let's quickly come back to the page actions here, and then I will put public. Okay, and in this case I want to return a string. What is that? Get error text, right? That is my get error, get username error text. Now this should be my method actually here. Now what should this contain? This should return the username here, the username error text dot get text actually here. Now this is bilocator, right? So let me get the element, okay, or the get text here, get text of this particular element. Now this would return me the text actually. This text, get text, is nothing but this particular username is required. But this is only applicable for Android only, right? As I told, this get text method only applicable for your Android only. In case of iOS, I need to go for the get attribute. It means that two different sets I need to write it. How do I do that? Simple concept, the same way how we have taken this one, right? Okay, so we here actually one more thing that we can do here. I'll say that string text, initially I'll put it as null, and here instead of this I will say return text. Okay, and in this I'll say text equal to, and here also I'll say text equal to. Fine. Okay, so like this you can get it actually for the username field. Even there is another way you can do that. Let me show you that. So instead of going here itself only, I can take another way. So let me show you that, a very simple way that I will do. Now this particular logic is there, right? I will add it directly into this get text here. So instead of this I can write this logic here, and let me show you this string str, keep it as it is, and this str goes here and here, and this goes here, and you will write string str, and here you can put this bilocator here, bilocator, and for this value, let's see what is the error it is coming. Might not have initialized, no problem. Initially you can put it as blank actually here. Like this also you can do. Now what is the benefit of this? Now for Android and iOS you don't really need to write separately. Like if you come back here, I don't need all these things. I can simply say return, and here I'll say that get text of this username error text. Even I can do this way also. So this will be, this get text will take care of for Android and iOS. Now let me do the same thing for the password empty field also, and then invalid credential. Okay, so 3 different error messages we have seen, right, in Android and iOS. So I'm fetching those things. Now in this login test I can quickly use those concepts. So here I will say, now for the empty username, right, I can say assert equals, what I'm going to assert it, the first thing is that I'll say login page dot get username error text, comma, what is that I'm expecting username is required, right? This is what I'm expecting, right? If you come back to this particular test, you can see username is required. So that is what I'm validating here. The same way for my, here if you come, like this is empty password, right? Now let's set it empty password, make it as empty. Now here what I'm going to do, I'll just assert equals, and in this case not get username, but this should be get password error text. Okay, what is that? Now in this case it should be password, like this, password is required. Like this you will be validating actually those things. Now the same thing, now let's go to this invalid credential, which we have seen 2 different formats, right, in our sheet. You can see invalid username, valid password, valid username, invalid password. So there are 2 combinations, and as I told at the beginning, for these 2 combinations I will be using single method by using the data provider. Now how do we set the data provider? We have already learned, right? So let me show you that. If you go to this, and if you come back here, you can see those concepts actually, how we are taking the data provider and how are we really taking those things. So you can use the same approach to take the data from the data provider, right? So I will be copy pasting that from there, the data provider first. Okay, so let me take it, and you can see, so this is the testNG data provider. I'm just giving some unique name. I'm giving as the invalid login data provider, and as we know, the data provider method always returns the 2-dimensional array. So I'm creating one object of object 2-dimensional array, and as I told, valid username, invalid password, invalid username, valid password, and for all these 2 combinations the error message is like that. Now you can see this particularly depicts your 2-dimensional array, right? You can see 2 rows are there but 3 columns are there, and that is what actually 2-dimensional array. So list, it's like list of list. Okay, like that you can specify. Now there are different ways you can get this data. For now I'm hard coding here, but the same data you can also get it from an Excel sheet also. Like here I'm specifying all these things, right? You can use the Excel reader as the we have also learned that in our Selenium days, right? To fetch the data from here and put it in format of a two-dimensional array. I'll put a separate session sometimes to fetch that data, but now our focus is to use of the data provider, right? How do I use it into this test? Actually, simple thing, I need to create that name also there, right? So I'll come back here, I'll put data provider equal to, simply I need to give this particular name, actually unique name, so that this particular test will understand to get the data from this particular method actually. And I'm assigning the parameters, so string username comma string password. Fine, how do I assign it here? Simple thing, I'll say uname and here I'll say password. Okay, and then what I'm going to verify here, the same thing, I'll take this one here, and verifying actually not this get password, right? It has to be get credentials error text, and this has to be here. I'm not hard coding here, instead of that I'm taking this error text. So from each row, so what will happen actually when I'm writing this particular test will run 2 times, because I have 2 rows of data actually here. Okay, each time it will take the username into this, password into this, and this error text here. It will log in, try to validate that, again come back to the second row, do the same step. If you have multiple other combinations, you can also put those things as well here. So how many rows you have, that many times this particular test will be running actually. And you can see all these things, whatever we are writing, right? This will be applicable for both of your Android and iOS. Now here I have hard coded all these things, right? This email and password and all this test data. What you can do, all these kind of things, you can also get it from a properties file, or how I have created this particular app data, right? You can create another set actually here. You can even say that strings, maybe you can say app strings.java. Actually you can create like this, and then inside this you can put those messages, error messages also, so that you can use it here. For now I'm hard coding here. Fine, so I think I'm pretty much done from my side. This login, actually whatever we have written, all these things I'm getting here, and the concept is that each test should hold at least one assertion. Actually that is what I'm doing here. Okay, now I need to run this, right? See, normally if you see that this always runs as a alphanumerical order, right? Your testNG test. I can set up actually priorities, because all the invalid scenarios first I need to run, then I need to run the valid test. So what I'm going to do here, I'll set the priority equal to 4, and these are all different learnings which we have done. Username, let's say username test I want to run first, then I want to run the password, then I need to run the priority equal to, let's say this is 1 2 3, right? So 1 2 3 and then 4, because valid test will always go into the success scenario, right? For all these 3 different scenarios, I will be still into this particular login field only, right? So that is why it is easy. Now there is one issue actually when you are running this multiple test, right? What exactly happens this login test? You can see that it is sending the value, right, or typing something. Normally what happens, if any data is there and on top of that I'm writing, sometimes it appends here. It means that first I need to clear and then enter some value. That is what I'm going to do now here. Simple way, you just need to check here like this, and then here I'll say get element by locator. That's it. You just need to here clear it. So you can clear this dot clear. Okay, and then you say get element of bilocator dot send case. You can do all these things like this, 3 different rows. First it is waiting, after that it is clearing, if there is any data is there, then it is sending that. Like that you can do. And now here let's see what else is there. So wait and type is there. What about the send keys? Now here what you can do, password capital P, right? The web element is capital P dot, you can say clear, then you send that to text whenever you are doing that, whenever the login page is calling. Perfect. So I think everything is done. Let's see, let's run it one by one for Android, another for iOS, and see if it is working fine or not. So let me go to this app data. So first I'm taking the iOS as priority. If you're not understanding how I set up this, you can watch the Appium framework's first and second session videos, you will come to know. So iOS I'm running, right? So you can see iOS simulator is up here. Let me kill this, and this let me again Control C and run the Appium server freshly and run this test. So this should test, actually this particular class should test for 5 test cases. Let's see that. Invalid 4 times, valid once. And you can see the error texts are changing based on the data that we are inputting there. And it should go with the valid login. Perfect. It logged in successfully, verifying this product text and closing the simulator or the app. Okay, and as you can see here, all this test it ran successfully. You can see 1, 2, and this is the test data that I have provided in the dataProvider, right? And then valid login test. 5 test cases ran successfully. Now this is for iOS, right? Now let's do this for the Android as well. The same test, the same page object model. I'm not doing any change except this particular, what do you call, if else condition. Let's see if this works fine or not. So let me close for now this iOS simulator, and this is my Android simulator, right? Appium server is running, and now let's run this particular test. Oh, you know what? This Stack Overflow error is coming because I'm using getText method and also this getText. So it is keep on calling this, but this getText I shouldn't be calling. Rather, I need to call the getText method of the Appium actually. So let me show you what I'm going to do. Get element, I'll say get element of bilocator dot getText. I need to use like this actually there. Then it should work actually. Yep. And you can see here bilocator and then get attribute I'm taking, right? So the same thing here I need to do. And now let's go to this particular test, login test, Android, and then run this. Now it should go with the valid login. And then it should stop. And here you can see 5 different tests got passed actually here. Invalid, both the scenarios, and then valid login test. All these 5 test cases ran successfully. So like this you can set up. So here we have learned how to utilize the page object model for both Android and iOS by using the page factory and bilocator, and how are we going to create the page actions based on the page actually there, and then we have used the testNG data provider to get the data into the test cases. So hope this gives an idea about how to deal with the different learnings that we have done and then utilize them into the framework. So in the same way, we will be seeing some more interesting topics to build the Appium framework with different other test scenarios. So stay tuned and do subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.